Welcome to our LB's The Lover of Books author chat. Tonight, I want to introduce this debut novelist, Joey Hartstone. He's a film and television writer. He has written 2 feature films, LBJ and Shock and Awe, which were both directed by Rob Reiner. He wrote on the first 2 seasons of the legal drama, The Good Fight. He is currently the showrunner and executive producer on the Showtime series, Your Honor. Is that Showtime or is it HBO? Is it Showtime? Showtime, okay. He is also the author of The Local, which we're all here for tonight, published by Doubleday this year. And he lives in Los Angeles with his family. Welcome to the author chat. We're so excited to have you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate
and
it.
You told me you're in New Orleans working on Your Honor right now?
Yeah, we're working on season 2 right now. So we're shooting about half of it here in New Orleans.
Exciting, exciting. We're all excited to see that. Now, let's go ahead and just dive right in. Give us your best blurb of The Local.
The Local is a legal thriller that takes place in Marshall, Texas, a hub of patent litigation. And the main character is a patent lawyer who sort of specializes in being a local counsel for big corporate out-of-town interests. And a client of his is accused of killing a local judge. So he has to defend him in a murder trial.
All right. I want to back up because you had a conversation, which you mentioned in your acknowledgments, about how this even came to be. Can you tell us more details on exactly what started this and how it blew up in your head and how it got going?
Yeah, I have a friend named Nathan Speed, who's an intellectual property lawyer, and he came to LA one day and we were just having dinner and he mentioned that he was going to Marshall, Texas. And so I asked him what that was about. And he told me all these really interesting stories about kind of this weird area of law and then this interesting little town where all of this takes place. And so he just sort of painted this picture of kind of like big city lawyers descending on this East Texas town and kind of being welcomed, but not really trusted by all the insiders there. And then he explained to me that the job of a local counsel, in particular for cases like this, is really to communicate with the local juries in Marshall. And as he described that, I just thought, well, that seems like a great character. And so that night, I just pestered him with questions for about 2 or 3 hours and just started my research that night and did that for a couple of years until I had the story.
Now, I'm sure you've heard interesting or cool stories before. So what made this one be the one that you're like, I'm writing a novel, like I want to get this on paper?
Yeah, well, I think the best stories are the ones that, well, I like to do either true stories or at least ones that are based on true events or true places. And so I think the ones that excite me are the ones that where I just want to learn more about that stuff, because you end up having to do a lot of research. And if that feels like work and it feels like a chore, then you're probably not going to write as interesting of a story. But I genuinely just found it fascinating. And the more I learned, the more I wanted to know about it. So once it becomes a passion like that, it's easier to write about.
Well, I can tell you from experience as a Texan, we are pretty particular and about being a Texan and having outsiders come in. Like my husband was born out of state and moved in 3 weeks. And I don't think many people consider him a Texan. So it's just, it's how it is, right? So yeah. It's a fascinating place to write about. Now, I'm sure you get this all the time, but what's the difference between now that you've written a novel and you've written many screenplays? Tell us the differences, and has this process of writing a novel changed your screenplay writing process?
Yeah, I think writing a novel is much more peaceful. There's very few people who have input, and those are the people that you actually want to hear from, and they're incredibly helpful. And it feels, I don't know, I kind of describe it like the difference between being in a band and just being on stage with your guitar and playing the song that you want to play. So it might not be as complicated or as interesting, but it's much more you. So that's how I felt when I got to write this. And it definitely impacted my screenwriting. I mean, the biggest difference was really that you don't really get to write what's in a head of a character in a screenplay because you can't see it on screen. You can't hear their thoughts. So I really liked being able to get inside the main character and have the audience know everything that he was thinking and feeling.
Well, we like your acoustic writing style. So have you had any more of these thoughts about, almost like historical fiction or those kind of real events that's maybe a little seed in your head that you might write another one?
Yeah, well, I like this one so much, and I find it so difficult to find stories and characters that I'm really in love with that I just want to keep these ones going for a bit. So I'd like to do a few more installments of this if I get a chance first.
Well, I'm begging. I kind of want the leg to have
Yeah.
a for like she is awesome. One of my favorites. She's so funny. She has so much depth that really hasn't even been shown that I can't wait to see. You think you'll be able to keep her or maybe make her?
Yeah, she was so fun. I think I came up with that. I think it was like the Women's World Cup when I was kind of coming up with some of these characters, and I just kept seeing Megan Rapinoe everywhere. And I thought that's who I should base this on. I should do like a Megan Rapinoe, but she's a private investigator. And then it was just sort of a cheat for me to understand who this character was.
Are there any other real life people, family, you or anyone that are pieces of these characters in this book?
Yeah, I mean, I think a main character is almost always like a bit of yourself, and so that's definitely true for James. I mean, and then Layla is kind of a compilation of a few different people that I know. And then I just try to I try to pull something from either someone that I really care about or myself, because that's the easiest way to care about your characters.
Now, when you've got these characters in your head, you're starting to work on the process. Do you build up who they are? Like, let me think about James and what important characteristics does he need to have to make this book, or do you just let it move it and see where he goes as a character?
Yeah, it's mostly in my head. I've never really enjoyed like writing character descriptions or writing like a diary for each character and thinking about that kind of stuff. That's not really my process. So I think it's I think that's why it's so helpful for me to think about people who I know, because then they feel three-dimensional right away. And so occasionally I will stop and ask myself, like, what would this person do in this situation, or try to figure out some background. But for most of it, I like, I guess out of sheer laziness, I like most of the thinking and work I do to actually end up on the page, because otherwise it's like there's all these great ideas and there's nowhere to put them. So most of it is there, but then there just comes a moment, I think, when you're writing and you just start to get a sense of, you start to understand what your character would do next before you really have to think about it. And I think that's when you know you're kind of there.
So what are the important characteristics you needed to James to have to make this book happen?
I tried to give him a few different things that he was struggling with, things that I could relate to, and that I think that's what makes something universal, is if it really feels personal for you. It's odds are somehow it's personal for everybody else. So like the idea that his father was dead, my dad died, and the idea that there's sort of unfinished business with him. I think I'd been married for about 2 years when that conversation with my friend Nathan happened, and I love my wife Abby so much. And when we got married, I found myself starting to fixate on this fear that I would lose her. And so that was the reason I realized there's a lot of characters, and especially with male writers, where they're widowers. And I think one of the reasons for that is because then you get to have the complexity of a man who would get married, but you can have them have love affairs with other characters. But for me, the reason that I did that was because I kind of wanted to just confront that fear and experience so that I could kind of process it and not have to worry about it anymore. And it was actually pretty helpful.
So why did you decide to make there be a love interest? Like, why did there have to be a romance with Layla?
I wanted it to mostly be about a character kind of coming back to life. So I wanted this character, what I liked about just sort of Speedy's or Nathan's kind of initial description of what a local attorney did, it seemed like, as far as like fast talking kind of freewheeling attorneys, they don't have to necessarily do as much when it comes to the intricacies of patent law. It's just like they get up, they do great openings, they do great closings, they're very charismatic. And so I thought, well, that sounds like somebody who could be incredibly superficial, and just someone that you could talk to at a party but wouldn't say anything real. And so I thought, well, that's how I want him to come across at first blush. And then I wanted to give him more depth. And so I wanted him to have secrets and things that he didn't want to talk about and deal with. And so having to struggle with having lost his wife and sort of close that part of himself, I wanted someone to come into his life where he would kind of dare to do something he had been afraid to do again.
Well, I loved that quote. I think it was towards right at the beginning of the book when he's talking to Judge Gardner and he says, I have everything I want. And then he says to him, well, then you don't want enough. Yeah. Because I mean, it's so definitive. Like that's sort of the part where he starts to wake up and Gardner's starts the curtains closing, right? So it's pivotal, and I enjoyed thinking about that statement. Like, for anybody in your life, you have to think, do I want enough in life? Am I really living fully? So I loved that theme. What other themes did you really want to portray in this novel, or did they just sort of naturally develop, or is there something you really wanted to get across?
Yeah, no, I just tend to not. I went to UCLA for screenwriting, and one of my professors said you should never start with themes, which I don't think is necessarily a rule, but I think the reason that he told us that was he thought if you come up with a theme first, you're just going to write to that, and the story is probably going to sacrifice it. And that if you write a true story, a sincere story, that themes will emerge. And I've usually found that to be the case. Like with this, I definitely knew that James would have this sort of looming father figure. And then he ended up having a surrogate father figure. And then the person that he's representing, his backstory was really tied in with who his dad was. And so that wasn't an intentional thing, that there was going to be all these fathers and sons and things like that, but it emerged. And so, yeah, I feel like for me, usually part of the way through, I start to feel a theme. And then on the second and third pass, once I know what it is, then I might construct things to sort of speak to that theme. But I try not to start there.
Just sort of flesh it out, you mean, once you see I'm peeking through?
Yeah.
So how long did this writing process take? When did you start it, and when did it end? Kind of just tell us, with being a debut novelist, how this went for you.
Yeah, so I had that conversation with Nathan, and then it was like 2 or 3 years because I was working on other things. And so I just kept thinking on it. I went to Marshall, did some research. I talked to some patent lawyers there. And I originally thought I'd try to write it as a feature film and then as a TV show. And then the pandemic hit, and basically the pandemic hit. I found myself without any TV writing to do. And I thought, if I write a TV pilot right now, I'll have to send it around and get a bunch of rejections, and I'll never get to write this full story. And so I had this time, and I thought, well, let me try to write a novel, and at least I'll tell the whole story this way. And then we'll see what happens.
So a little bit of circumstance navigated you towards the novel route.
Yes, very much.
Was it, not having an experience before, did you feel like this was not a painful process, but laborious, or, what's it like?
I loved it. I thought it,
Okay.
I really enjoyed it. And the more I work in TV, the more I wish I was writing more novels. But no, it was, yeah, I sort of did it the way I do a screenplay. I just did all my research. I'm pretty organized, and I did a very, very thorough outline, which took me probably 4 months or 5 months to do. And then I banged out the first draft in like under 2 months. And then just rewrote for a while. But yeah.
Well, knowing you want to write a sequel, are you able to do that pretty easily with everything that you have going on right now? Because you are still working on your honor, and you have a little one. Like, what's that going to be like?
Yeah, no, at the moment, I don't think I have the time, but this job will end in a couple months, and my family's very excited about that. And then I'll look into maybe doing a follow-up to this if I can.
Well, you'll have to keep us posted for sure. All right. So you said you've shown up at Marshall. You're kind of doing some research, but I know that from your acknowledgments, that you talk about your Aunt Kathleen. Is that Kathy in the room? Do you mind if I bring you on, Kathy? I'm going to chat with you a little bit. Hi, thanks for coming with us. You'll have to unmute for me. Let's see if I can get it to work. All right.
I got it.
There you are. Perfect.
Finally came up.
Well, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. It's always interesting to hear my handsome nephew speak.
So glad to have you both. Or, as I understand it, you're a criminal defense attorney. Is that correct?
Right. I'm for about 40 years, I did public defense, and then I was in private defending.
Well, he couldn't have asked to have a better expert right there in the family to go for. Tell me what it was like working with Joey. Like, how did the process work? Because, being an attorney and then answering questions for a novel, was it easy? Is it hard? Just tell us what it was like.
Well, it was really fun and exciting because I don't get to talk about my work that much to someone who might appreciate it from the outside. I always get the question of how can you represent blah, blah, blah. So he was always posing these really interesting questions about the legal process and is this possible or is that possible? Would this work in a courtroom? And they were good questions because they came up a lot in my life. And so it was fun to share with him some anecdotes that maybe helped or didn't help. But I got to talk a lot and I like that part.
Most attorneys do. And I will say for the record, I was an attorney in Texas too. So my father and my brother. So we're a bunch of talkers. What was the most challenging part about this?
To be helpful, because it's not just about maybe my experience, but to try to understand the characters that he is creating and put my knowledge into that kind of formula and try and be of help. So often, I'd worry that, gee, I don't want to blab on, I want to be of help. So I think that's the toughest thing, is to understand the question and be pointed to that. And his questions were really good.
Was there anything you had to look up? Because some things you just may not even encounter, right?
Well, I didn't know anything about this patent law in Texas. That to me was fascinating. So I felt like I was learning a whole part of the law. And it got exciting. I thought, oh my God, Joey, patent law, really? How about a good murder? And yes, it's there too.
That's right. Well, what advice, what did you tell Joey? Like, give me an example of how this worked. I'd love to hear about it.
Probably the best example.
Oh, thank you.
And let me just say this. So Kathy's an unpaid advisor on everything I write. I was bothering her today as I was writing an episode for this show. She always takes my calls, but I always say this, but one of the reasons that she's so good at this is that you can call, sometimes you'll call an expert and you'll say, here's a situation, what do you think? And they'll say, it would never work that way. And that's the worst thing you can hear, because it's sort of a dead end. And so you want somebody who embraces that it's storytelling, and that maybe it doesn't usually work this way, but it could. And she's really good at that. But I got stuck on this one thing because I realized that the murder that had been committed was a federal crime. And the whole idea was that this is supposed to be a very local story. And I panicked and I called her and I said, oh my God, this is a federal crime and it has to be in a state courtroom, not a federal courtroom. Is there any reason that they would leave, that the feds would let it stay in state? And she said, yeah, the death penalty. You're in Texas. He killed a local hero. If it's a federal murder, there's almost no chance that this person will be executed. But in Texas, you want that in a state court. And I was like, thank you, Aunt Kathy.
That was excellent. Like, that gives me the chill bumps, because as soon as I was thinking it's death penalty. Yeah. And it was perfect. Not the death penalty is perfect. Your storyline was, it really raises the stakes at that point, and the tension, and that arc just goes right on up. Well, I think you are wonderful, Kathy. I think that you are awesome, that you're helping out your nephew like that. Joey, did you want to say anything to Kathy? Kind of, I know you acknowledged her, but it's just kind of cool that she's here.
It is. Thank you so much. I'll probably call you tomorrow with more questions.
Happy to hear.
Get ready, Kathy. They're on their way.
Sure.
He already has an outline ready for you. Well, thanks again for showing up, and who knows, there may be another question coming up. All right. Well, there were other experts in line that I know you talked about, but one of the really cool things that you did bring up was the expert in the story that you spoke to, and that she was a felon. First of all, when I read that, I thought, oh my gosh, how's she going to be an expert on the stand as a felon, right?
Yeah.
But that never really came up. But this process of helping convicted felons, I thought was fascinating. Why did you decide to bring that into the storyline?
Yeah, I wanted the lawyer to have to talk to a criminologist, basically. And I just wanted the character to be slightly different than anything I'd seen or read. And so, and I was looking, I always tried to incorporate things that had something to do with Marshall. And so there's an HBCU there called Wiley College. And I thought, well, that's one thing you could do is you would go there. And, in the patent litigation world there anyway, there's not a lot of diversity in the lawyers. And so that's one of the reasons that the character Layla is Black. And so I thought, maybe she would reach out to experts that white attorneys in this area wouldn't think to ask. And so that's why I had them go to that particular person and get her help.
As soon as you read something and it's in your brain, you start seeing that or looking for it in the news, your brain just automatically goes to it. And I did see, I think it was last week in the Washington Post, there was an article about these second chance Pell Grants, and where MIT is now offering computer science courses for them to get certified, basically a 12-week program to, in a rehabilitation process, which is really cool. And I'm sure those aren't the only ones, but I just found that fascinating, that how much money is spent on, prisoners, felons, whatever, just to keep them there, and how much less it is to educate, to make them, part of society when they get out. So
yeah, I didn't know much. I didn't really know about those second chance Pell Grants. And then I wrote that scene, and I had the professor talking to her student in the room. And luckily I had a really good copy editor who read it and explained to me that second chance Pell Grant people are still incarcerated. So there was almost a big mistake in that. But good proofreaders mean a lot.
Absolutely. I did like that part. It was something you don't read about a lot, but is very fascinating. All right. I just shifting gears some. You have an audiobook as well as the book. Have you listened to it at all?
I listened to like half of it. I didn't get it until about 3 days before the book published. And I was already in this job. So I got to help pick the narrator, and I thought he did a great job, but I have not finished it.
I really wanted Matthew McConaughey. Jealously, I wanted a Texas narrator. He wasn't quite as, I don't think he's Texan, but it was just I was just curious how that process went. Like, they kind of give you samples of people and you got to pick one.
Yeah, they did. They gave a couple. And this gentleman is actually a New York actor. But what I liked about him, besides I thought he got the humor and he made me laugh, was he didn't try to be inauthentically Texan.
Yeah, that would be worse.
Yes, that's what I thought too. So I thought, if someone comes in, they do sound like McConaughey, all the better. But if they don't and they're trying to, it's just going to be laughable the whole time. And so he didn't kind of overreach. So I like that.
Awesome. I love the cover, by the way. Did you get any choice in that?
I love it too, but nope. A guy named Michael Windsor designed it at Doubleday, and it came in. And I thought, I'm glad I like it because I'm not very artistic, so I don't know that I could help. But no, I think it's great.
Well, what's interesting is when I went back to look up just a specific point on your book, and the picture of Marshall, the courthouse, came up, and it's almost that color.
Yeah,
it's kind of a yellowish hue, and I thought, that's I didn't realize that from the book, but that was an interesting tie-in.
Yeah, I know it is. It's such a beautiful courthouse, and it's that light yellow color, so it felt like they picked the right color.
Yeah. Now, in front of that, and the reason why I looked up that courthouse was the Confederate statue you pointed out. I believe, is it still up? It seems to be. I couldn't find any articles where it had moved.
Yeah, it was when I was there, and then I read one article about a petition. So I referred to a petition in there that was a real petition that was asking to take it down. But so I think I was there in 2018 or 2019. It was still there. And in fact, I probably wouldn't have noticed it because I'm from Arizona, so I'm not from a southern state. So it didn't even occur to me that that's what that was. But one of the lawyers that I talked to there was like, look out this window. You see that right there? And I still don't quite know what he was trying to tell me, but he said, he's like, you're going to see one of those in front of every courthouse here. And he was trying to explain to me what it was to be in Texas. But I don't know if I honestly have no idea if it was pride or if he was saying like, hey, guy from California, just so you know, this is a place that still celebrates the Confederacy. But he did point it out to me.
Well, I did see where the petition was put up in 2020. And then the guy that proposed it, I think, ended up taking it down. But what they were trying to do was to get it to be moved to a Civil War cemetery, not too far from town, but to be, in that cemetery instead of prominently in front of the courthouse. But I don't think it was even really voted on. I think it was just taken down. Just FYI, if anybody likes the history of it.
Yeah.
All right. We talked about you writing. what was the most fun, like that you loved about writing this book? Because there were some pretty humorous parts in it, but what did you like? What did you enjoy the most?
I went through it with my wife about the second or third draft. She read it all the way through and gave me really thorough notes. And I have fond memories of it because when I started writing the book, she wasn't even pregnant. And before the book got published, we had a child. So our son Teddy was just sitting on both of our laps, going back and forth, and we're seated across from each other with our laptops open, and we're just writing together. And that was definitely a joyful experience.
Oh, that's really cool. That's a great moment you'll always remember.
Yeah.
And this may answer this question then. How are you able to tap into emotion? My son is writing college essays right now, and he says that's really the hardest part for him, is to evoke that emotion that he knows that they're looking for, to personally connect.
I don't know. I think I'm a very stoic person. I'm not an unemotional person by any means, but I'm very stoic. And I frequently get notes on my writing that people don't feel what my characters are feeling. And so I think what I'm probably doing is the same way I guard my own emotions. I do that for my characters, and it's unintentional, and it's something I keep trying to get better at. But for this, it was being able to write what's in his head made that a lot easier. So I think where I might fall short in screenwriting, because I can't explain what's in the character's head, maybe it was kind of a more suitable medium for me to be able to write what's inside my characters, because I know I have feelings and thoughts going on all the time. I just don't express them very often.
Well, and maybe that's where Joey's bleeding into James, because
Maybe.
James says that, and when he's in public, he doesn't allow his emotions to show, and we don't even know what happened, right? We just know that something's happened to make him the way he is. But that also is kind of like that carrot where you want to know what's happened. Why is he like this? So I enjoyed that. All right. You said you might have written this to be a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that it could be made into a movie? Like, what's going on with that? Because how it read in my mind was, it was a movie. I mean, it a lot of times I'll visualize some, but this one I could see it. I mean, right there in front of me. So what do you think?
I hope it'll be a TV show.
Okay.
So my bosses are Robert and Michelle King, who created The Good Wife and The Good Fight. And so they were some of the first people to read the book, and they really liked it. So we sold it to CBS, and the idea was that we would go out and pitch this as a TV series middle of this past year, but I got busy with this new job, so I'll have to wait till next year. But yeah, we're hoping to pitch it and maybe find a home for it and actually get to do it as a TV show.
Who do you see as any of those roles? I mean, I know, Rappin', she may not be available to play the leg. So is there anybody in particular that you see or want?
I try really hard not to cast the things I write in my head, because it's a recipe for disappointment. For my main characters, I usually there's enough of myself that I don't have to think too far out of it. I mean, I couldn't help but feel, in fact, I felt so much Mcconaughey sometimes when I was writing it that I had to pull back and make him less cool, because that wasn't what I was trying to do with the character, but he's like the most fun Texan you could write for. But yeah, no, I'm not sure. I try to kind of keep a blank canvas for that, because when you get really talented actors, they change who the character is, and it's ill-advised to be stubbornly fixated on one person. Makes
sense. Why a series then? Because we don't have that expertise that you do. Why would this work better as a series than a movie?
Yeah, they just don't make movies like they used to, like movies like the ones that made me want to be a lawyer, and then a screenwriter, like The Firm and A Few Good Men and things like that.
Which I love all of those.
Yeah, me too. I mean, every Grisham movie, and just sort of kind of straight dramas like that, and legal, with a little legal thriller to it. You just don't see them anymore as films, and which is fine, because I've been working in TV for several years now, so it's where I want to be at the moment. But yeah, you just tend to see, even if they're not ongoing, even if they're just limited, you see 6, 8, or 10 episodes. It just seems to be, there's so many platforms now that there's just a lot more content going up that way than in movie theaters.
Now, would you want to keep it and write the screenplay for it?
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, hopefully it would be a situation where I get a writer's room, and there'd be 4 or 5 other people. And my guess is that the material in the book would maybe give you about 5 episodes or the framework for 5 episodes. So I think there'd be a lot more to explore, which would be fun. And that's one of the things that would be exciting about having a writer's room, is just kind of expanding on the characters, creating some additional stories, and just seeing where else it would go.
Having that brain trust to keep it moving.
Yeah.
Now, what's the process like? Because you've never had to do that, right? Or have you gone from a book to a screen writing situation?
Not my own book. And I when I wrote the movie LBJ, that was about Lyndon Johnson. So it wasn't based on any one particular book, but I obviously read a bunch of biographies on him. My wife and I are going to adapt a book next year as well. I love it. I'm not, I don't like creating stories out of whole cloth. This was actually one of the few kind of not based on true story things that I've written in the past 5 or 6 years. I like the puzzle pieces being there and trying to put it together. So I like already having the framework and then thinking, how can I make each scene creative and interesting, rather than what I find daunting is just sort of, you have everything in the world to choose from. Now tell a story. I'd much rather be confined and then figure out a way to do it within those constraints.
All right, back up. You mentioned you and your wife were working on something. Can you tell us anything what that is?
Yeah, there's a book that's coming out sometime next year called In the Blood, and it's about two guys who created this stuff called Quick Clot, which basically is just this clotting agent that you can put on very severe wounds, and it will kind of, for lack of a better term, like cauterize them right then. So it was developed for the military and can be used. It's used by EMTs and other things like that. But it's this whole kind of David and Goliath story of just sort of these two enterprising creators and business people who had never really struck gold with any of their ideas, and then they're competing with kind of a major pharmaceutical company that is that sort of has inroads into the army and an inferior product, and one that doesn't really do the job that it's designed to do, but they have more power and more money.
Are y'all on a timeline for that, or is that just an open-ended project?
It's kind of open-ended. I mean, thank God the book hasn't published yet, because I'm too busy right now to work on it. But we'll get to work on it the moment we get that manuscript.
And who's the author of that? Just, I don't know that I heard that.
Yeah, his name is Charlie. I'm so tired.
That's all right.
Charlie Barber, Charles Barber.
Awesome. Thank you. Didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
No problem.
All right. So there was a line that I thought was that was kind of made me chuckle, because knowing what your profession was previously, and I'm wondering how this line would even work. Let's leave out the possibility that Mr. Zawar is being framed for this murder because, well, this isn't the movies, which I thought was pretty hilarious, because, that's what you normally write for, or TV, which I just thought that was hilarious. Okay. So much of this surrounds football. Did you know going in, it's Texas, I'm going to be including football into this, or how did that come up?
Yeah, I mean, I love Friday Night Lights,
Me too.
the show, the book, the movie, and then even just being in Marshall, like you see the high school stadiums and you can just feel it. You see the flags and the banners everywhere. So yeah, I mean, I played football 1 year of my life. I was horrible and have basically no experience, but there's just sort of, I mean, one of the reasons I went to Marshall was to figure out like what are the things that people here are really passionate about, and that seemed to be one. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, my hometown, there was literally a sign that said, "Last one out, turn out the lights." If there were a playoff game, like the entire town was gone, and all the neighboring towns too, not just your town. Everybody went. So it's definitely a passion. One of my favorite scenes, though, was him at the football stadium, that reflection scene. Did you know that was gonna, like, how did that process? I just loved it.
Yeah. Of all the stuff that I outlined, that was one of the few things that actually just sort of happened. Sometimes I feel like if you build the first 80% well enough, that you can kind of get to the end and it'll sort of flow, hopefully. But yeah, I didn't know. There's sort of a callback to like an earlier thing that he talks about a couple of times, and you don't realize that it's going to be important until you do. And a few of those things sort of in the closing statement just kind of happened. So that was actually kind of fun, because I try to be a planner when I write. So very rarely am I surprised when I get to something, but that was one of the surprises.
It felt very organic and it felt very sincere. So I think those allowing yourself to give those moments paid off for me, at least. And having grown up eating, breathing Texas football, it didn't feel like you were from Arizona and only played 1 year. So kudos to you on that.
Thank you. Watch a lot.
While people are getting their questions together, I kind of do a quick questions on all my authors. Don't have to think too much, just think quickly. Are you ready? Chopped or sliced brisket?
Sliced.
All right. East or West Coast?
West.
Screenplay or novel writing?
Screenplay.
Plotter or pantser?
Plotter.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
Research or writing?
Research.
TVs or movie?
TVs.
Rock or country?
Country.
Okay. Garth Brooks or Chris Ledoux?
Garth Brooks.
Do you like to write in silence or with noise?
Silence.
Favorite Christmas carol?
The Little Drummer Boy.
Favorite football team?
I'll say the Eagles for my wife.
Good boy. All right. Thanks so much. That was awesome. All right. Looks like we have some questions in the chat box. Does anybody want to ask a question live? If you do, remember, raise your hand. I'll go ahead and get Chris. And I think you answered this, but she's a transplant Texan, had gone to Marshall, and she would love for this book to be a series. I think we all would. I think it has so much potential. Another question, and Mom, I don't know if you want to answer this one since you're on here. No, she doesn't. All right. The question is, did you tell your mom you were writing a book, or did you surprise her? So cool that they're both here tonight.
I actually may not have told her this. Like when I started out, I would tell her everything I was doing. And this one, I actually think I may not have told her. And then I sent it to my mom and my stepmom, like when it was done and they were on a road trip or something, and they read it to each other while they were driving. And I think they may not have known it was coming until that moment.
That's kind of cool. I like
she
that.
Doesn't remember, so yeah.
Anybody else have a live question? You can feel free to ask, raise your hand. I'm going to go through with more questions. Otherwise, just type them in that chat box. All right. I asked about the Christmas Carol because obviously you made a reference to it with Eartha Kitt because of Layla. Was there any special reason why you chose Eartha Kitt and Santa Baby?
Yeah, but can I say, that's the one question that I think I answered badly. Is it called The Little Drummer Boy, or is it a song about a drummer boy? And I'm not remembering the title.
I think it is called The Little Drummer Boy.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah.
So I actually did that because my wife is friends with Tatiana Ali's sister, and Tatiana Ali is an actress. She was kind of most famously the little sister in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And so I've met her a few times, and she's really wonderful. And so I kind of lied. I guess I do picture some actors sometimes when I write, and I pictured her a little bit for Layla. And then the reason I did the Eartha Kitt thing was actually, race is a really important topic, obviously in this country and in this story and in this town. So it was important that I describe people's races, at least, especially the lawyers and the people in the courtroom. And I wanted to find a way to refer to her as Black without having to talk about her skin. And so I referred to her as Black once. And then I just sort of, on Tatiana Lee's Instagram account or something, she posted a photo of herself side by side with Eartha Kitt, and they look very, very similar. And so I thought, well, that's what I'll do. I'll describe her as looking like somebody else, and then you can visualize that without me having to just sort of like hit you over the head with race.
Well, I liked it. I like cultural references too. I thought it was a great way to do it. You also mentioned, like I said, those two, and the reason why I said Garth Brooks or Chris Ledoux is because those were the two you brought up. Mm-hmm. Are you fans of their music, or is that just something that you threw in there, or why those artists?
Huge fan of Garth Brooks, and Chris Ledoux is just a little before my time, and I never went backwards. So Garth Brooks was like right there when I was in middle school and high school. And I know he loves Chris Ledoux because he screams in a live album, "God bless Chris Ledoux." So yeah. I thought, well, James Euchre is just a little bit older than me, so that seems like a good reference. So I went back. I mean, I know a few of his songs, but not really. Yeah.
I too am a Garth Brooks fan, and it seemed like you put a little Easter egg in there. Did I pick up on that? So the quote is, they're listening to an early Garth Brooks album. Then the last line in that same, like maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 paragraphs later, but in her grace, she left it along and we continued the dance.
Yeah.
And so
Oh, yeah.
I just wondered if
Yes.
that was a nice little Garth Brooks reference there.
It was. I forgot about it. I don't think this was intentional, but yes, now I remember. Yes, I did. That's one of the best.
I loved it. I was like, and then it was just on replay, right? So
Yeah,
he was one of my first concerts. Oh God, you can put on a show. He's so good.
I never saw him live.
Oh, so good. Any other little Easter eggs in there that you remember that maybe we didn't pick up on?
I can think of. I don't normally hide things just for my own enjoyment, but there probably are a couple. But I guess one thing for me is I named the judge his sort of mentor. I named him Gerald Gardner, and he was named after my favorite professor at UCLA named Gary Gardner. And then the birthday I gave him was the same birthday in the same town, even though they're different states. But so he was a big influence on me. So is he still with us? Like, does he? No, he passed away a handful of years ago, but yeah, he was a special guy. So it was fun to kind of create a character for him.
Absolutely. What an honor. What a tribute. I think that's fantastic. Have you ever considered making a playlist for this? I know a lot of authors will do that now, making a playlist for their novel.
Yeah, I will do that, especially when the character is like vastly different than me and I want to get into a different type of headspace. I mean, the playlist for this is not dissimilar from just the playlist I would normally listen to. So, but yeah, I think I was listening to a lot of Jason Isbell at the time and a few kind of sort of alt country, or not quite country, but then I went back into some of my high school stuff as well, some Kenny Chesney, Toby Keith, all the stuff I grew up listening to.
Yeah, James was right on track with me. I think he might have been a year younger, so I was hearing prom country like nonstop in my head, you know, whether it be Brooks and Dunn or all those, George Strait, just it was awesome. Okay, now I took this a little personal. How could you not include a Whataburger in a Texas novel? I'm just gonna say.
Because I haven't spent enough time there, and I'm not a real food guy. So I come to California. every friend who comes to California wants to go to In-N-Out right away, and
see, it's important, right?
I know. I'm just not one of. That's just not how I experience the world. I'll hit a McDonald's no matter where I am, or something like that.
All right, you need a Texas food expert. Okay. You might just need to.
Okay.
I'm here. You don't have to pay me. But Whataburger. If when you start writing this film, to be a Whataburger.
Okay.
Just saying. Or maybe you don't want to beat them on the head and they get in the car and it still smells like Whataburger. Okay. Because that happens too. All right. Just kidding. All right. So you said that we kind of know what's happening for you on the horizon. You talked about maybe a sequel. You have this stuff going on, then you have another. Anything else? Because it seems like you're a pretty busy guy.
Yeah. So I wrote this book after a very not too long, but a dry spell of sorts. I mean, that's sort of how it seems to work in this business. And then I finished the book, had a baby, got to work on Your Honor, got a different job than when I started this season, and now I'm just swamped. But it's good. There are a few things on the horizon to do as well, so it's better to be busy than bored, I guess.
Absolutely. All right. Who was your favorite character to write in all of this? Did you have one? James? Why?
Yeah. I just like the voice, and like people have asked me why I chose to write it in the first person. And as a screenwriter, it was sort of a cheat because it just felt like I was writing a soliloquy. It was just dialogue, even though he might not be speaking to somebody else. But of most of the characters I've written, it was the one that was the easiest to just sort of get into. I kind of knew who he was right from the start.
And then as a screenwriter, just something like the closing arc, because the closing argument's huge, right? It's such a build-up. One of my favorite things about John Grisham's or any of those legal dramas are having that just quintessential. Are those easy for you? Do you like writing them? Are they fun?
That's my favorite thing to write. Yeah. as we're doing the Your Honor season right now, we're getting into some courtroom stuff, which is why I'm calling Kathy on the regular basis. But yeah, the moment I get to it, it's like you can feel the things that you're not adept at writing or that aren't in your interest. And then yeah, the moment I get into a courtroom, it's like, I mean, I watched A Few Good Men a million times, and I mistakenly thought I wanted to be a lawyer because I liked watching lawyers on TV so much. So yeah, it's what I want to do.
Yeah, you can't handle the truth.
Exactly.
Now when hold on, I lost my spot, but was there anything difficult? Like, it seems like this is your groove. Was there any kind of hang up in this novel? I know you go to experts for X, Y, and Z. Was there ever a spot that just kind of stopped you in your tracks, or was it always a pretty steady flow for you, even though it was over a good amount of time?
Yeah, it was the case. I really tried to build this story around a patent case. So I read books about patents, I read books about patent litigation, and as Kathy said, it's like at some point I just was like, why would I write an entire story about a patent lawsuit? I mean, you see there are great movies like A Civil Action, and they're about, you know, suing industrial companies and stuff like that. And I thought maybe I could do it. And then it was just too in the weeds for an area of law that I don't think could sustain an entire story. And so I just sort of stepped back and thought, like, all right, kill somebody and then see if it gets more interesting. And it just immediately, and it was great because then the main character was in a field of law that he'd never practiced before. So if I make mistakes when I write it, it's okay because he's never been a criminal lawyer either. So it might feel like an honest mistake. But yeah, coming up with the case, I struggled for a couple of years to try to make patent law really interesting and failed.
Yeah, well, patent law in itself is sometimes pretty mundane.
Yeah,
Chris wants to know if this was the original title.
it was. Kathy got in my head like the moment she saw the book. She's like, "So, what do you think they're going to actually want to call it?" I was like, "I don't know, but I don't like coming up with titles. So if they change it, I'm out. I'm not going to be very helpful." But no, fortunately, it was allowed to stand.
Well, Kathy also said that she found the patent law actually pretty interesting after
Yeah.
this book. I think it's maybe more exciting than we give it credit for.
I found it fascinating. I really did. I mean, I sat in that patent court room and I could sit there all day and watch it, but I wasn't sure I could make it universally compelling for people who aren't fascinated by the intricacies of lesser known legal fields.
We talked about James being your favorite. Who was the hardest character to write for you?
The guy, Sam, his sort of not even his nemesis, but sort of the guy that kind of gets in his way a lot. Because I like the prosecutor in the case because he's not just an arch villain. They're on the same page. They're formidable opponents. But this guy was kind of dumb and so that made him less interesting to write. But I still wanted him to be compelling without being just kind of one-dimensional.
Yeah, I mean, he came across exactly what you wanted him to be. I mean, he was kind of the town loaf, but probably hanging on by his last name, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right, I want to ask what you're reading right now or what you're recommending to people, because it's always fascinating to find out what it may just be work, but if there's anything outside of that, is there anything you'd like to recommend?
Well, I always recommend The Bathhouse by PJ Vernon. He blurred my book, but it was only after I just read his honestly and just really liked it and reached out to him. And then I'm doing the Texas Book Festival next month. So I'm on a panel with May Cobb, who wrote My Summer Darlings, and Joe Lansdale, who wrote Born for Trouble. So those are the next two on my list because I'd like to read them before I meet those two authors.
Awesome. Now, I normally don't get to ask this because one, I've never had a screenplay writer, but what TV show or movies would you recommend for us? Do you have any favorites? I know you mentioned Friday Night Lights and that was in all forms, but is there anything else that you're like, oh, this is a must see?
Yeah. because I'm running this show right now, I haven't watched a new drama. I'm watching Seinfeld over and over again because I don't want to watch anything that's similar to but the next thing I'm going to watch when I'm done with the show is The Lincoln Lawyer, because those books were a huge inspiration for writing this. And I hear the show is really good. So that's definitely next up on my queue.
Yeah, I like that they mix, the description Lincoln Lawyer with Friday Night Lights. And I just love that you picked Texas as your setting. Was that hard to not being from here, stepping into writing? I mean, because Texas is almost its own character, I feel like, in books.
Yeah, no, there aren't a lot of places that I feel like I could confidently write, places that I haven't lived, but Texas is one of them, just because I think Arizona is close enough. Like you and I can talk about, Garth Brooks references and Tim McGraw and stuff like that. And I feel very comfortable having those conversations. So I try not to overreach and write about the things that I really didn't understand about this area or this state. But I think my upbringing in my small hometown in Arizona is not too dissimilar from this. So.
Not at all. Have you ever thought about writing something set in Arizona?
No, I find my home state infinitely boring. So I don't think I've once been benefited by being from Flagstaff, Arizona when it came to my screenwriting or other writing.
Just gonna tell you right now, your Aunt Kathy just about leaned over laughing. She thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, because she's the only member of my family who never moved to Arizona. So she probably shares that opinion.
I love it. I love it. All right. Anything about writing this book that you'd like to share with us? I always like to give an open-ended that maybe I haven't asked, that you're just like, I wish somebody had asked me this question. Try not to share, shut down those emotions. Go ahead and just open them up to us.
Well, one of my best friends, his name's Mike. He read it and he said, I think that Judge Gerald Gardner is gay. And my friend who I alluded to, my professor, Gary, was a gay man. And so I found it very interesting that he thought that there was potentially a relationship there, because I didn't have one with my professor and neither did James and this guy. But I was happy because I felt like it must have rung true, and the inspiration for it, that I captured that authentically, because he sensed there was like a little something more there than just a father-son relationship. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't feel like there was any besides a father-son relationship, but I did wonder, a single man that had been living on his own for so long in Texas, that maybe he had stayed closeted for, for obvious reasons, because, East Texas is known for prejudice and and I can say that I'm from Southeast Texas. So, but I mean, it's something that in certain regions you have to really fight against, and I think that was one of them, especially his generation. So all right, well, I want to thank you so much. I think looks like someone said, first of all, when and where is the book festival for Texas?
Oh, it's in Austin, and I think it's November 5th and 6th.
Okay, everybody get your tickets there, head out if y'all need a trip. Austin's always fun, and I'm sure there's some good barbecue, so try not to just get room service.
I'll do it. Yeah.
And if you get a Whataburger, you'll appreciate it too. And then my mother said, the mayor of Flagstaff is now on the phone. Just get ready.
I don't think I can name a single mayor of Flagstaff in my entire life.
Well, I'm so glad that you joined us tonight. It's been awesome. I absolutely loved this book. I was hoping you would say that there was more to come, not just from you, but from these characters, because they're so memorable, they're fun, and they gave me, especially the leg, like she's her own story. Like if you want to spin off, just go right ahead, because I'm all for it. But thank you, Joey.
Thank you so
Kathy,
much
for joining us. All the readers out there, please make sure and check out his website. Follow him on Instagram, and please keep us posted on all your new stuff. Like we'd love to see, what projects you're having. Just it's always fun. And if you wouldn't mind, everyone, go follow the LBs, the Lover of Books, either on Facebook or my Bookstagram. Check out for reviews, recommendations, or more. I'm going to try to post this chat on my YouTube channel, LB, the Lover of Books. Next Sunday, October 16th, if you can see right here, The Change, it's Kirsten Miller. So GMA Book Club pick, she's coming on. Hope everybody enjoys that one. And you'll get to see why Emily Henry says The Change is like a guttural rage scream and somehow also soft, tearful hug. of a book, which I couldn't have loved it anymore. She says it was marketed as Witches of Eastwick meets Big Little Lies, two stories I really love. And I both think that's a fairly accurate pitch and that it somehow undersells what it is. Thanks, Mike, for running the background scenes. And if you know of an author you'd like to hear from, let me know. But I'm just so excited, Joey. You came on tonight. I know you're busy in New Orleans. I'm going to wish you some good food your way. I know that's not important, but if you can get some good crawfish etouffee, you'll thank me tomorrow. All right, guys. Y'all have a good night and keep on reading. Bye, guys.